I used to think betrayal came from strangers. From people who owed you nothing, who walked into your life with hidden agendas and sharp knives behind their backs. I never imagined it would come from the woman who gave birth to me, who held my hand through childhood scraped knees and teenage heartbreaks, who told me she'd always be on my side. But that was before I understood what envy looked like when it wore your mother's face. The day I lost everything started like any other Tuesday. I was in my office on the 42nd floor of the Sterling building downtown, reviewing contracts for the Whitmore acquisition. 5 years of strategic planning, 18-hour workdays, and calculated risks had brought me here. At 34, I was the youngest senior partner at Hastings & Kline, one of the most prestigious corporate law firms in the state. My corner office had floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city, a city I'd conquered through sheer determination and brilliant legal strategy. I'd earned every inch of that view. My phone buzzed. Mom's name flashed across the screen. I almost didn't answer. Our conversations lately had become strained, filled with barbed comments disguised as concern. But guilt has a way of making you do things you shouldn't. Hey, Mom. Sarah. Her voice was tight-clipped. I need you to come home this weekend. Family dinner. Your sister's bringing her new boyfriend. My younger sister, Jennifer, who still lived at home at 29, who dropped out of college 3 times, who worked part-time at a boutique and spent her weekends posting selfies on Instagram. The golden child who could do no wrong. I have depositions scheduled for. Always working. Mom's laugh was sharp, bitter. You know, Sarah, there's more to life than chasing money and pretending you're better than everyone else. My chest tightened. I'm not pretending anything. I worked hard for my career. We'll see you at 6. Don't be late. She hung up. I stared at the phone in my hand, that familiar ache spreading through my ribs. The ache that came from trying to earn approval that would never come, from succeeding so thoroughly that your own mother couldn't celebrate it because it made her feel small. I didn't know then that the call was a setup. That while I was sitting in my office, reviewing contracts and building empires, my mother was already building my downfall. The weekend arrived too quickly. I drove to my childhood home in the suburbs, that modest 3-bedroom ranch where I'd grown up sharing a room with Jennifer, where I'd studied by flashlight after midnight because she needed the overhead light off to sleep, where I dreamed of escape and success and proving I was worth something. Mom opened the door before I could knock. She was wearing her best dress, her hair freshly colored, makeup carefully applied. Behind her, I could see the dining room table set with the good china, candles flickering, the whole production. You're late, she said by way of greeting. Traffic was. Jennifer's been here for hours helping me prepare. She stepped aside to let me in, her eyes scanning my designer suit with obvious distaste. Must be nice to afford clothes that cost more than some people's rent. I bit back my response. Breathed. Counted to 5. Where should I put my purse? Kitchen counter's fine. Everyone's in the living room. Everyone turned out to be Jennifer, her boyfriend Marcus, and my father, who looked up from his newspaper with a tired smile that told me he already knew this evening was going to be difficult. Sarah. Jennifer jumped up, her sundress swirling around her legs. She was beautiful in that effortless way some people are, with our mother's delicate features and clear skin. We'd gotten different genetic draws. I'd gotten Dad's sharp angles and serious eyes. This is Marcus. Marcus stood, extending his hand. He was handsome, charming, worked in tech doing something with apps. Within 5 minutes of conversation, I could tell he was going nowhere fast, but Jennifer looked at him like he'd hung the moon. Dinner was an ordeal. Mom served pot roast and mashed potatoes, comfort food meant to remind me of childhood, of simpler times before I'd gotten too big for my britches, as she liked to say. Every achievement I mentioned was met with tight smiles and subject changes. When I talked about the Whitmore acquisition, Mom interrupted. Jennifer's thinking about going back to school. Interior design this time. That's great, I said, meaning it. What program are you looking at? But Mom was already talking over me, listing Jennifer's options, her talents, how creative she was, how she had such an eye for color and texture. Dad ate his pot roast in silence. Marcus looked uncomfortable. Then came dessert. Apple pie with ice cream. My favorite as a child. So, Sarah, Mom said, her voice sugary sweet in that dangerous way I'd learned to recognize too late. How's David? My fork froze halfway to my mouth. David was my fiancé.
Was.
We'd broken up 3 months earlier, a fact I hadn't shared with my family because I couldn't bear to hear Mom's inevitable commentary about how I'd probably scared him off with my career ambitions, how I'd prioritized work over relationship, how I'd end up alone if I wasn't careful. We're not together anymore. Jennifer gasped. What? When did this happen? A few months ago. It just didn't work out. Mom's smile grew wider.
Sharper.
I'm not surprised. Men don't want to marry their competitors, Sarah. They want partners. Women who make them feel like men. That's not. I started, but she kept going. You were always so busy trying to prove something. Always trying to be smarter, work harder, make more money. You can't build a life that way. Look at Jennifer. She knows what matters. Family, relationships, being there for people. Something inside me cracked. Years of swallowing criticism, of trying to be good enough, of succeeding beyond anyone's expectations and still feeling like I was failing in her eyes. It all rose up in my throat like bile. I have to go. Oh, don't be so sensitive, Mom said. I'm just being honest. Someone has to tell you the truth. I stood, grabbed my purse from the kitchen counter, and walked out. Dad called after me, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. If I'd stayed one more second, I would have said things I couldn't take back. I should have said them anyway. The next week, everything fell apart. It started with a phone call on Monday morning. Internal Affairs wanted to speak with me. There had been allegations of misconduct, falsified billing records, conflicts of interest, client trust account irregularities. I sat in the conference room while they laid out the evidence. Documents with my signature, emails from my account, bank transfers that showed money moving in ways it shouldn't. Every piece of evidence was compelling, damning, and completely fabricated. This is impossible, I said, my voice shaking. I never signed these documents. Those aren't my emails. But they had digital records, timestamps, my password authentication. Someone had done this carefully, methodically, with access to systems they shouldn't have had. The managing partner, Gerald Hastings himself, sat across from me with disappointment etched into every line of his face. Sarah, we brought you on because we believed in your integrity. If even a fraction of these allegations are true, they're not true. None of it is true. But proving innocence is harder than proving guilt. While the investigation proceeded, I was suspended without pay. The news leaked to the press within hours. Rising star attorney faces ethics violations was the headline on the legal blog everyone in the industry read. My phone exploded with messages. Former colleagues distancing themselves, clients demanding reassurance, rivals barely concealing their glee. My professional reputation, built over a decade of flawless work, crumbled in 72 hours. The State Bar opened their own investigation. The clients I'd brought to the firm started jumping ship. The Whitmore deal collapsed when their board demanded someone without ethical questions handle their acquisition. I hired a forensic accountant and a criminal defense attorney who specialized in white-collar crime. They were expensive. They were necessary. They found traces of the hack, evidence that someone had accessed my accounts remotely, but proving who was behind it would take time and more money than I had. Because simultaneously, the financial attacks began. My credit cards were maxed out on purchases I never made. My bank accounts showed withdrawals I never authorized. My mortgage payment bounced. My car was repossessed from the parking garage of my apartment building at 2 a.m. I watched from my window as they towed it away, too stunned to cry. Someone was systematically destroying my life, and they were very good at it. I called my father. Mom answered. Mom, I need help. Something's happening. Someone's. Oh, Sarah. Her voice dripped with false sympathy. I heard about your troubles at work.
Such a shame.
I always worried you were flying too close to the sun. This isn't about ambition. Someone's framing me, hacking my accounts. You need to take responsibility for your choices. This is what happens when you prioritize career over character. Are you serious right now? I'm being destroyed, and you're lecturing me? I'm giving you perspective. Maybe this is a blessing in disguise. A chance to reevaluate your priorities.
Come home, Sarah.
Move back in with us. We'll take care of you. The offer made my skin crawl. Going backward. Admitting defeat. Becoming the cautionary tale she'd always predicted I'd be. Let me talk to Dad. He's not available right now. Think about what I said. We love you, even if you've made mistakes. She hung up. I sat on my couch in the apartment I'd be evicted from within the month and felt the walls closing in. Every door was slamming shut. Every bridge was burning. And my mother's voice echoed in my head with something that sounded disturbingly like satisfaction. 2 weeks later, I lost everything. The firm fired me. The bar suspended my license pending the outcome of their investigation. My landlord served eviction papers. My electricity was shut off. The forensic accountant told me we were close to finding the source of the hack, but his bill was now exceeding what I could pay. I packed my life into boxes and moved them into a storage unit I could barely afford. I crashed on my friend Rachel's couch, a friend from law school who offered help without judgment. At night, I'd lie awake and try to understand who hated me enough to do this, who had the sophistication and access to pull off something so elaborate. The answer came from the most unlikely source. Jennifer showed up at Rachel's apartment on a Thursday afternoon. She looked nervous, fidgeting with her purse strap. Sarah, we need to talk. Rachel made herself scarce. Jennifer sat across from me in the small living room, tears already gathering in her eyes. I didn't know, she said. I swear I didn't know how far it would go. My blood turned to ice. What are you talking about? Marcus. He's not who I thought he was. Jennifer, I don't have time for relationship drama right now. I'm fighting for my entire life. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Her voice rose, cracking. Marcus is a hacker. He does corporate espionage, identity theft, financial fraud. He's really good at it. And Mom, she choked on a sob. Mom hired him. The world tilted sideways. What? She was so angry after that dinner. After you left. She went on and on about how you thought you were so much better than us, how you needed to be taken down a peg, how it wasn't fair that you had everything when you didn't even appreciate it. She said you needed to learn what it felt like to lose everything. I couldn't breathe, couldn't process what I was hearing. Marcus said he could do it, make it look like you'd committed fraud, ruin your career. He has connections, people who can hack systems, plant evidence. Mom paid him. She gave him $20,000 from the money Grandma left her. Mom did this. The words felt foreign in my mouth. Impossible. But even as I said them, pieces clicked into place. Mom's satisfaction on the phone. Her too convenient offer to let me move home, defeated and dependent. The way she'd orchestrated that dinner, introduced Marcus, made sure we all met. She'd been auditioning her weapon. Jennifer was crying openly now. I thought it was just going to be something small. Like maybe your firm would question something and you'd have to explain it. I didn't know he was going to destroy your entire life. And then when I saw what was happening, when I saw you losing everything, I confronted him and he laughed, Sarah. He laughed and said your mom was getting exactly what she paid for. Where is he now? I don't know. I broke up with him. I told him I was going to tell you the truth. He said no one would believe me, that Mom would deny everything.
She was probably right.
Without proof, this was just my sister's word against my mother's. And Mom had always been good at playing the victim, at twisting narratives to suit her needs. But now I knew, and knowing changed everything. I contacted my criminal defense attorney, Elizabeth Chun, and told her what Jennifer had revealed. Elizabeth was a shark in a Chanel suit, and her eyes lit up with predatory focus. If we can prove the connection between your mother and this Marcus person, we can flip this entire case. But we need evidence. Bank records, communications, something concrete. Jennifer can testify. Family testimony in cases like this can be problematic. Juries are skeptical. We need more. I spent the next 3 weeks becoming someone I never thought I'd be. I hired a private investigator named Tony who specialized in financial crimes. I had him follow Marcus, document his activities, identify his associates. Meanwhile, Jennifer, racked with guilt, agreed to help. She met with Marcus one more time, wearing a wire. She played the role of conflicted girlfriend perfectly, crying about how she missed him, how she was sorry for overreacting. Marcus, arrogant and secure in his invulnerability, bragged about the job, talked about how thorough he'd been, how impossible it would be to trace anything back to him. He mentioned my mother by name 3 times. It was beautiful. Tony tracked the money. $20,000 had moved from my mother's account to a shell corporation Marcus controlled. From there, it split into payments to other hackers, document forgers, and a lawyer who specialized in planting false evidence in corporate systems. We had them. Elizabeth filed a motion to dismiss the charges against me, accompanied by a criminal complaint against Marcus and a civil lawsuit against my mother for conspiracy, fraud, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. She also filed a bar complaint against the firm that had represented Marcus and notified the FBI about the larger network of criminals he worked with. The legal machinery ground into motion with satisfying inevitability. Marcus was arrested at a coffee shop in the middle of a meeting with another client. The FBI seized his computers and found evidence of dozens of similar schemes. My case was just one of many. He destroyed lives for money, casually, and without remorse. My mother's reaction to being served with the lawsuit was exactly what I expected. She called me screaming, "How dare you? I'm your mother. You're going to drag your own family through court over some misunderstanding." Misunderstanding. My voice was cold, calm. I'd found a strange peace in the eye of this particular storm. You paid someone to destroy my career, my finances, my entire life. You did it deliberately, intentionally, because you couldn't stand to see me succeed. I never. That's not. You have no proof. We have Marcus on tape. We have bank records. We have testimony. Mom, you're going to lose everything. And unlike what you did to me, you'll deserve it. She hung up. 10 minutes later, my father called. "Sarah, please. Your mother is devastated. Can't we work this out as a family? Dad, she tried to ruin my life. Not accidentally. Not in a fit of passion. She planned it. Paid for it. Watched it happen. Where were you while she was doing this?" His silence told me everything. He'd known. Maybe not the details, but he'd known something was wrong and he'd looked the other way because that's what he always did.
Keep the peace.
Don't rock the boat. Let Mom have her way.
I love you, Dad.
But I can't protect her from the consequences of her choices. Not this time. The months leading up to the trial were strange. The firm reinstated me once the evidence of framing came to light, but I didn't go back. I couldn't. Instead, I started my own practice, focusing on representing victims of corporate fraud and identity theft. People who'd been destroyed by systems that were supposed to protect them. People like me. My reputation, surprisingly, recovered faster than I'd expected. The story of what had happened made the news. Attorney Frame's own daughter gets caught, and while the publicity was uncomfortable, it also brought clients. People who wanted someone who understood what it felt like to be systematically dismantled, who would fight with personal fury as well as professional skill. I was good at it, better than I'd been at corporate law. Because now I wasn't just chasing success. I was fighting for justice, real justice for people who needed someone in their corner. The state bar investigation concluded in my favor. All charges were dropped. My license was fully restored with a formal apology. The forensic accountant helped me recover most of the stolen money, and I sued the banks and credit card companies that had failed to protect my accounts. I won those cases too. Piece by piece, I rebuilt my life. But it was a different life than before. Better, in ways I couldn't have anticipated. More authentic, more purposeful. And then came the day I'd been waiting for. The trial. The courthouse was beautiful in that imposing way government buildings are, all marble and columns and echoes. I arrived early with Elizabeth, both of us dressed for battle in sharp suits and determination. The civil case was being heard first, before a jury who would decide whether my mother owed me damages for what she'd done. Marcus had already pled guilty to criminal charges in exchange for a lighter sentence and his testimony against my mother. His lawyer had advised him that fighting was pointless given the evidence. He'd be spending the next 5 years in federal prison, and his hacking career was over. But my mother had refused every settlement offer. She'd stood firm in her innocence, claiming Jennifer was lying, that Marcus had acted alone, that she'd been framed just like I had. She'd gotten herself a lawyer, some slick guy named Preston who specialized in hopeless cases, and she was determined to take this to trial. I think she believed, even then, that she could win, that she could convince a jury that she was the victim here, that I was the ungrateful daughter persecuting her own mother out of spite. She'd always been good at playing victim. I saw her arrive with her legal team, Dad trailing behind looking like he'd aged 10 years. She was dressed conservatively, hair pulled back, minimal makeup, projecting maternal warmth and wounded innocence. She didn't look at me as she passed in the hallway, but I saw her hands shaking, saw the tightness around her mouth. Fear looked different on her than I'd expected.
Smaller.
More human. The courtroom filled. Press in the gallery. Curious onlookers. Some colleagues who'd come to show support. Rachel was there, and Jennifer, who would be testifying for the prosecution. The judge entered. We rose. The machinery of justice began its grinding work. Opening statements painted the picture. Elizabeth was brilliant, laying out the timeline of my destruction with clinical precision while letting the emotional weight speak for itself. She showed the jury who I'd been before, successful, respected, financially stable, and who I'd become after. Unemployed, bankrupt, professionally destroyed. Then she connected every thread back to my mother, showing motive, opportunity, and premeditation. Preston, my mother's attorney, tried to paint a picture of family dysfunction and misunderstanding. He suggested I was a difficult daughter who'd always been resentful, that my mother's alleged involvement was actually just me lashing out with false accusations because I needed someone to blame for my own failures. It might have worked if we didn't have the evidence. Marcus testified first. He was gaunt in his orange jumpsuit, shackled, diminished. But his testimony was clear and damning. He walked the jury through how my mother had approached him, what she'd asked for, how much she'd paid. He provided dates, times, specifics. He showed the jury the contract she'd signed, the communications they'd exchanged. She wanted it to look natural, he said. Like Ms. Henderson had made mistakes that accumulated over time. She was very specific about making sure it would be hard to prove innocence. She wanted her daughter to suffer. Mom's lawyer tried to shake him on cross-examination, suggesting he was lying to reduce his sentence. But the evidence backed up every word he'd said. Bank records, emails, text messages. The paper trail was immaculate. Jennifer testified next. She cried through most of it, but she didn't waver. She told the jury about the dinner, about Mom's rage afterward, about introducing her to Marcus, about slowly realizing how far things had gone. I should have stopped it, she said, voice breaking. I should have said something sooner. I didn't think Mom would actually do it. And then when I saw what was happening to Sarah, I was terrified. I didn't know how to fix it. The jury listened with rapt attention. Several of them were parents themselves. I could see them trying to understand how a mother could do this to her own child. Preston tried to discredit Jennifer, suggesting she was mentally unstable, that she'd been manipulated by me, that her testimony was coached. But Jennifer had receipts. She'd kept text messages from our mother. Screenshots of conversations where Mom had talked about teaching me a lesson, about taking me down, about showing me what real struggle felt like. The evidence was overwhelming. I testified on the 4th day. Elizabeth led me through my story chronologically, letting me tell the jury what it had felt like to watch my life disintegrate in real time. To lose my career, my home, my savings, my reputation. To be accused of crimes I didn't commit. To discover that the person behind it all was the woman who'd raised me. Why do you think your mother did this? Elizabeth asked. Objection. Preston stood. Calls for speculation. I'll rephrase, Elizabeth said smoothly. Based on your relationship with your mother over the years, what was your understanding of her feelings toward your professional success? I looked at my mother for the first time since the trial began. She stared back at me with something like hatred in her eyes. Or maybe it was fear. At that moment, I couldn't tell the difference. My mother has always been uncomfortable with my achievements. Every success I had seemed to make her angry rather than proud. She'd make comments about how I was showing off, how I thought I was better than everyone else. After I became a senior partner, our relationship deteriorated significantly. She couldn't seem to be happy for me. It was like my success was a personal insult to her. And when you lost everything, how did your mother react? She was satisfied, almost gleeful. She offered to let me move back home, but it felt less like support and more like she wanted to see me dependent on her again. She wanted me to fail. Preston's cross-examination was aggressive. He tried to paint me as a bitter daughter who'd always been difficult, who'd abandoned her family for career ambitions, who was now lying to extract money from her elderly mother. Isn't it true that you rarely visited your parents? That you were too busy with your important career to spend time with your family? I visited as often as I could. But yes, I was busy building my career. That's not a crime. And isn't it true that you looked down on your sister for not being as professionally successful as you?
No.
I loved my sister. I still love my sister. I never judged her choices. But you judged your mother. You thought she was beneath you. I thought she was my mother. I thought she loved me. I was wrong about the second part. The courtroom was silent. The defense's case was thin. Preston called character witnesses who testified that my mother was a good person, a devoted parent, active in her church. He called a psychologist who suggested I might have a narcissistic personality disorder that made me perceive normal motherly criticism as attacks. He tried everything he could to muddy the waters. But the evidence was clear. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. They found for me on all counts: conspiracy,
Fraud.
intentional infliction of emotional distress. The damages they awarded were substantial: $3 million, including $2 million in punitive damages intended to punish her for the particularly malicious nature of her actions. My mother collapsed when the verdict was read. Dad caught her, helped her to a chair while her lawyer asked for a polling of the jury, a motion for mistrial, anything to undo what had just happened. All his motions were denied. I sat very still as the verdict was read, Elizabeth's hand on my arm, victory and grief warring in my chest. I'd won. The system had worked. Justice had been served. But my mother had tried to destroy me. That truth didn't change with the verdict. It would never change. The courtroom emptied slowly. Press rushed out to file their stories. Spectators filtered away, whispering. Mom's lawyer was already talking about appeals, though we both knew they'd fail. I stood to leave, but my father approached. He looked broken, older than his 68 years. "Sarah," he started. "Don't," I said quietly. "Don't ask me to forgive her. Don't tell me she didn't mean it. We both know the truth now. She's still your mother. She stopped being my mother the day she decided to destroy me. What she is now is someone who committed crimes against me and is facing consequences for those crimes. That's all. She did it because..." He stopped, struggling for words. "She was jealous. She'd given up her own career when we had kids, and watching you succeed in ways she never got to, it ate at her. It doesn't excuse it, I know, but maybe it explains it. Her jealousy isn't my burden to carry. Her regrets aren't my responsibility to fix. I spent my whole life trying to earn her approval, trying to make her proud. And all along, the thing that would have made her happiest was to see me fail." I walked past him toward the courtroom doors, toward the hallway where Elizabeth waited, toward the life I was rebuilding from the ashes of the old one. Behind me, I heard my mother's voice, broken, desperate. "Sarah, please. Don't do this. Don't leave things like this." I stopped, turned, looked at her one last time. She wasn't laughing anymore. She was crying, mascara streaming down her face, hands reaching toward me like I was supposed to come back, to comfort her, to make this better. "You did this," I said, my voice carrying across the empty courtroom. You planned it. You paid for it. You watched it happen. And the only thing you regret is that you got caught.
So no, Mom.
I don't forgive you. I don't want your apologies. I just want you out of my life. I walked through those courthouse doors into the afternoon sunlight with my head high and my heart full of something that felt like freedom. The city spread out before me, full of possibility and second chances and justice that sometimes, against all odds, actually prevailed. Behind me, the doors closed on the sound of my mother's sobs. She'd wanted to see me lose everything. She'd wanted to watch me fall. She'd wanted to prove that my success was undeserved, that I'd gotten too big for my britches, that I needed to be taken down. Instead, she'd lost everything herself. Her reputation, her money, her daughter. And this time, I wasn't the one crying. I had won, not just in court but in life. I'd survived her worst, rebuilt from nothing, and emerged stronger than before. My practice was thriving. My reputation had been restored. I had friends who stood by me and a purpose that mattered. She had nothing but the consequences of her choices and the memory of the daughter she'd tried to destroy. Justice, it turned out, had a sense of irony after all.